はグランニースプーンプーンの提供でお送りします。
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Adcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I am your super genki host, Renu, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Soup.
I'm Soup, and I'm dying.
You're lovely.
I can be lovely and dying. I'm dying.
Okay. This week, AD stands for Abayo Tumblr, because we'll be talking about Tumblr and our farewells to it. So Just as a warning before we get started, this episode will most certainly be hashtag not safe for work.
Yep. Well, you might have noticed that this is not the winter 2019 start episode. Well, we haven't really watched any of winter 2019. So
it's on the books. Don't worry.
That will come out eventually.
Very
I
soon,
promise.
Hopefully. Yes.
I promise.
It's not gonna be like last season, I promise.
Please. Oh, yeah. We'll
okay,
do our
worry.
best. We'll do our
worry.
best.
Yes. So what have you been up to?
Well, I'm dying, Renu. I'm suffering so badly. My Tuesday schedule is an honest to God 8 to 8, 12-hour day.
Ooh.
And my Thursday is 8 till 3, except I make it harder for myself than it has to be because for some reason, every time I try to go to sleep early, I end up just like up at like 5 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I have class in 3 hours. I have to leave in like 2 hours. I haven't slept yet. Oh no.
Oh, Sue.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of this I do to myself. Of course, this is technically my fault, but I don't want to take all the responsibility for it because I do have just a lot of reading. I spent like 4 or 5 hours reading about Marx, and that was only a third of my homework. And it was just, it was more than I thought it would be. I kind of blindsided me, and part of the problem is I also have a lot of other stuff going on over the weekend, so it can sometimes be hard to sort of put all that together. It should be normalizing sometime soon, but I'm gonna have to adjust to the fact that I'm back up to 3 games of Dungeons and Dragons a week because I make poor decisions with my life.
Because you don't know how to say no to people.
Apparently I don't, and that's I promised, like, oh yeah, I'll like run a thing way back like a year ago, and it's coming back to haunt me. Now we're just gonna start tonight, and you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. Luckily, I'm only running 2 of them, so hopefully I will live a little bit. And it won't just be like the awkward last time where I just didn't have anything ever because I was dying all the time and had no time to, do any preparation. So hopefully, that one ends up being okay. Aside from that, the Grand Blue Fantasy Guild Wars event happened, or they call it Unite and Fight, and for a solid 4 hours, my guild accidentally became the top ranked guild in C tier.
Oh.
The way that it works is basically Unite and Fight is an event in which you get pitted against other crews and you just grind points by killing a boss over and over again.
Oh.
Yeah. So, it can get a little bit hectic if you're trying to win. We usually don't try to win, but we got into C tier just barely, which is like the lowest tier you can get into. And then we got pitted against a couple of crews, which was whatever. We happened to win just because we had more points than them, and they were actually just really easy opponents. So we were just really lucky. And then we got pitted against a crew named Comcast. So we named ourselves AT&T, like we renamed our guild, and then we crushed them into the ground. Yeah. So one of my guildmates found the leader of the other, like the guildmaster of the other guild, on Twitter, and they were just firing memes back and forth while we ground out points.
Whoa,
and
personal.
Yeah, I actually feel really bad for the other crew because it was literally just one guy carrying so hard, just like,
Aww.
Please let me rest.
Oh no!
So that poor guy, we really just ran him into the dirt.
Wow.
And then we did it the next day with a different crew. They were called Thick with 2 C's, of course, and so we named ourselves Suck with 2 C's, and then we crushed them into the dirt. And at that point, we were in B tier because we ranked up because we just were in the top 6 of all the worldwide rankings for C tier, which is wild.
Wow.
And yeah, so we accidentally try-harded, and probably
when you go to a guild master's Twitter,
right, as soon as the shit talking starts, you kind of it's over.
I can't believe it.
Like, it really is just over. You have to win. You can't lose. But we did win. It was the only time we've ever really like try-harded a guild war.
It's the only time we've ever tried hard ever.
Ever, really, yeah. And we went 4-0, which is like we won every single matchup.
Oh my God.
Which is wild. It used to be that you could 5-0, but they removed the last day, so now there's only 4 matches. And we somehow, it was kind of like a sports anime where we gave it our all, and we reached deep into our hearts, and we used that to win. I felt a piece of my soul die that day.
Why?
But anyway, that was pretty fun, and that was, I wasn't expecting to get to rank that highly, but we somehow ended up doing that. But probably never again, that one.
Man,
I have also been listening to a podcast about professional Overwatch called the Hot Pot Podcast, which is by three Twitter personalities in the Overwatch professional sphere, and I love it because it is like the least bad podcast about esports out there, because it's not just like 3 white dudes talking. It's like listen, it's not 3 white dudes giving their super serial opinions about the future of esports. It's just like 3 fans that like esports, Overwatch specifically, and one of them is Korean, and then the other 2 are Chinese or Chinese immigrants. One of them lives in Australia, I think.
It's the Asian cast.
Yeah, so it's very Asian, and somebody did like an amazing fan art for their podcast where they're all like gathered around. They have like the hot pot, and they all have chopsticks that are like the they gave the Korean one the metal chopsticks because that's what chopsticks are like in Korea. It was really cute. It was really cute, and there was really good attention to detail, and. Yeah, that's really good. Honestly, if you have even a fleeting interest in professional Overwatch esports, or just like listening to people talk about something they're passionate about, even if you're not really sure that you're gonna like anything about it, I think this is the most accessible kind of podcast about that kind of thing, because it's just people who like a thing talking about it, which is what we're doing too, to be fair. Yeah,
but we're not, hot podcast.
We're not a hot pot podcast. That's true. But there's also only 2 of us, which would make for kind of a hard hot pot. Like,
yeah, you're right.
you have to bring a third person who can carry you, so that you can justify spending all the money you did.
It's
you know,
true.
going out for hot pot.
Yes.
I have had to explain this to my friends who didn't, you know, grow up going to like buffets and all you can eat places where it's like, oh no. This is like a fun outing and we're gonna have like a good time, but this is also war. Like, we are fighting the restaurant to win our money.
We have to win our money.
We have to eat enough beef to make someone upset. We have to win. We have to win. And they're just like, how can you win at eating? And I'm like, you can. You can. I know this is like a very specific, like, kind of Asian mentality, but you can win. It's a war. It's a fight.
Yes.
It's a battle. And, you know.
Yes, the most basic goal you have whenever you attend a buffet is to eat more than what you spent.
Yes,
right?
yes. Exactly. Right? It's like, if you manage to consume enough beef or meat, because that's the easiest thing to rack up costs, really. It's like the most expensive stuff they have.
Yeah.
If you eat enough to offset the cost of eating there, then you've won. You know, it's like
won.
You kind of have to eat enough like thinly sliced beef to make up like 4 steaks.
For me, it was seafood. I dug the seafood.
Seafood's good. I'm still a fan of the thin cut land animals though.
Thin cut land animals.
Yep. And the last thing I did was, I didn't watch it, but it's worth talking about how a guy named H Bomber guy, who's kind of like a YouTube video essayist.
Okay.
Did a charity stream of Donkey Kong 64 and raised like $250,000 for a trans charity.
Oh.
Yeah. And also like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez showed up for some of it, which is to say the congresswoman who is in charge of the 14th congressional district of New York showed up to talk about trans rights, which was, I mean, in a word, fucking wild. What?
Yeah, what?
So this is kind of the future of politics we're seeing here, where a congresswoman knows what Twitch.tv is and showed up on a stream to talk about trans rights.
She got the hookup, man.
Yeah, so that was very odd. He played for like 60 hours to finish Donkey Kong 64, which is apparently like a really long game, because he was going to finish like all of it. He's got 101%. And
in one stream?
It was one stream, but he took like 2 8-hour breaks to sleep, I think.
Okay, I was going to say, like, you can't...
Well,
I mean,
no, you shouldn't.
You
can, but you shouldn't.
Yes.
But yeah, that was the thing that happened, and it's honestly kind of wild, and not the worst thing to happen ever.
No.
Like, but what this means is that we maybe have peaked in 2019, and we should just declare the year over, because, you know,
it's all downhill from here.
It's kind of all downhill from there, you know. It's like the impending specter of capitalism is looming larger and larger. It is becoming increasingly likely that the end of the world will come before the end of capitalism. It is it is day 32, I think, of the longest congressional shutdown in history. 33, maybe even. It is bad. Things are not good right now, but you know, it's this kind of thing that gives you a little bit of hope that maybe we can do something about it.
Yay.
So anyway, what have you been up to?
The most important thing that I've been up to, which is the only thing I'll talk about, is I watched Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes. Oh my God, Renu.
My God.
Can we please do an episode about it? I honestly.
Yeah. You know what? We can, because I love that movie so much.
So I considered asking you to do it this week, but then I realized, but actually I just kind of want to see it again before I do that.
Dude, that's such a good idea. I literally just saw it the other day, or the day before yesterday, and
nice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that movie did unspeakable things to my psyche.
Yes. to my emotions, to my psyche.
I thought it was like kind of a miracle that we got like a good Spider-Man movie with Spider-Man Homecoming, and then Sony was just like, you are like little baby, watch this. Brrr.
Well, that's the thing, is that Sony Pictures Animation, right? Their repertoire up until now has not been, fantastic. Like, you would never expect them to have made this, right?
Yes.
So up until now, it's been stuff like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, The Smurfs, which The Smurfs is their highest grossing film to date, even including Spider-Verse. And then there's other stuff like Hotel Transylvania and all
which
their
has its
iterations
own
of that.
weird cult following.
Yeah,
and the Emoji Movie.
And then the Emoji
They did
movie.
the Emoji Movie.
So then you think, like, how on earth, how was it even possible that this studio made Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? Because it doesn't look like anything else that they produced ever.
Yeah, it legitimately blows my mind how good this movie is.
Yes.
And I have to wonder what exactly they did to make this. Like, what happened?
Someone sold their soul, or maybe the entire animation studio did, and then they hired more people to also offer up their souls. Because they had like 100+ animators working on this film.
This is what happens when, you let some... I mean, arguably, like, Spider-Man is a safe property, but it has a history of, like, bad movies attached to it. This is what happens when you arguably let people take a really big risk on something. Because
it is a huge risk.
This movie is one of the most visually creative, stunning, and gorgeous things I've ever seen, period.
I really want to know so badly how this movie got made, right? Like, from pitching it to, like, actually getting it made. Like, how did they do it?
Yeah. I've also never seen a comic book movie adapted in a way that actually adapts comics as a medium to movies as a medium without just, like, oh, this is like a live action whatever, right? Like, this is literally I'm watching a moving comic book.
Yes.
In like the best way possible. Exactly.
I mean, a lot of the Marvel franchise, right? They'll occasionally lift scenes from the comics, like pose for pose, whatever, panel for panel, into the movie, right? But it's still, it's still a live action movie, right? It still has its own thing. But this was just like, oh my God, like, everything, like, from the animation to the graphic design, like that beautiful marriage coming together.
The music too is so good. I've been listening to the soundtrack over and over again. It's just so good.
Yeah, so good. Like, it was echoing in my head, like, long after we had left the theater. I was like, oh my God, finally a superhero soundtrack that I just, like, am in love with, because there are a lot of, like, superhero properties where I'm like, I mean, that was fun to watch, it was actiony, it was very visually impressive, and then that's it, right? It's an almost forgettable impression. But this movie straight up, like, it will be in my, I don't know, animation Hall of Fame or whatever, from everything that I've watched since I was young, right? This easily trumps a lot of stuff. Like, it's so awesome. Yeah, we could totally do an episode about this.
I could go on about this movie forever, but here and now is not really the time.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's worth mentioning, and if you get the chance and you haven't, go watch it, people.
For sure, it is one of the. I legitimately think that this is my favorite movie. Period. Now. Like, I mean, I cannot think of a movie that I enjoy more than this movie. This movie had me screaming.
I know. Like you think about, like, how, like, things that might be similar to it, and they don't even measure up by a country mile.
No, not even close. Not even a little bit close.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous, the bar that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse set. Mm-hmm. Also, one of the Spider-Mans is voiced by Nick Cage, and you're gonna love him. And
I loved it
is that not wild that in the year of our Lord 2019 that there is a character that people take seriously, more or less, that is voiced by Nicolas Cage, and then he's just a beloved part of pop culture now again. So, yeah, this is a movie that is just there. Everything about it is incredible, and I promise you, it has the best after credits scene that you will ever see in a movie, in a Marvel movie. It had the best after credits scene. I also the fucking weirdest ending sequence I've ever seen for a Marvel movie, and that was the best because they essentially just like. I don't know if you've ever seen like a source filmmaker shit post about like Team Fortress or whatever. They get kind of strange. This was like that, but in a movie. And with Spider-Man, I was like, oh, wow, that scene from End of Evangelion? But with Spider-Man's?
But
maybe.
With the Spoodermans.
Spoodermans. So yeah, definitely watch that. Definitely watch that movie. That movie is ridiculously competent. Like, blew me away. I was expecting it to be good because people were raving about it on my timeline, and it was even better than they could even have made it. I was like, oh, I love this.
I know. Like, people would say, like, it's good, but good is an understatement. Oh my God.
Yes. It was so good. It was so good. And I fell in love with this movie. And I promise you, if you watch it, you will too.
There are people out there that love to hate on a thing just because, but for me as an animator, there was zero chance of me not liking this movie because it is so impressive.
Yeah, it is ridiculously stylish.
Yeah.
Like, just ridiculously so. Like, if you think about the level of like style and polish that Persona 5 had, this trumps it.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's really something incredible. And it is also like we can't just sit here talking about Spider-Verse all day, but it is unquestionably like a highly relatable piece of media for like everyone will relate to somebody in this movie. There's a lot to it. Anyway, let's talk about Tumblr. If you didn't know, Tumblr is a social media / pseudo-blogging website created by David Karp, with a K, eventually acquired by Yahoo, that allowed users to create text posts, submit images, and reblog them, whatever. It is a social media platform. It was a verifiable haven for queer people, people of color, leftists, and also Nazis, and impressionable young people who had to grow up in the anonymous, terrifying hell void that is the far reaches of the internet. If you've ever been a part of the Tumblr space for more than about 3 minutes, there's an incredibly high chance that you would easily be able to recognize who else had a Tumblr. It really is like, you don't think about this until you have to live in a space with people who have never had a Tumblr, but it really is that meme where it's just like, some of y'all had never had a Tumblr, and it shows because it's so easy to tell who had a Tumblr. It's so easy.
What are the symptoms of having Tumblr?
Well, we'll get into what the markers of Tumblr as a general culture, or at least what the general culture eventually turned out to be, came to be. It was a haven for fandom after the inevitable downward spiral of LiveJournal. Remember that guy's LiveJournal?
I remember.
And really where the culture came to mature into its current state, for better or for worse, though probably for the worst. In late 2018, they announced that they would ban and purge NSFW content from their platform, and eventually enacted the policy on December 17th. So we are now technically post-apocalypse in Tumblr. You're not allowed to post the titties. And if you say naughty things, the Tumblr police will get you. So
got you.
All of that being said, it does not do justice to Tumblr to just give a summary like that, because Tumblr was a lot of things. It was first of all, it was a bad platform. Like, it was just not a good website. It still isn't, and you still require an extension to make it even vaguely usable.
Yes.
And Yeah, but there is a lot of appeal to how customizable it is, right? Like with a Twitter page, you can like change the color of your blog or whatever, your like timeline, your profile. You can like put a header in, but that's kind of about it. With Tumblr, it is very much like, you know, if you had CSS code, basically, you could just make a page. And so there's like pages, like themes that people created for free, mind you.
Yeah.
And you could have for free as long as you did a credit, you know, and people would make ones for like comics, for like web comics hosting, for podcasts, really. And other such things. It was like the microblogging platform. And it was also a place for marginalized people to set up some semblance of a community on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was probably the queerest place on the internet for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
It is also a place where straight teenage girls talked endlessly about how horny they were for bland white men in their 30s. I don't think I forget. I remember. And it is one of the places on the internet that has birthed some of the most mundane, absurdist content that the internet has ever seen. I have two posts here that will really just sum this up for you. There's one by a okay, so this is why I'm writing this as NSFW, because you can't talk about Tumblr without talking about really all this crap. So Tumblr user Buzz Lightyear Huge Cock says, some days you just gotta fist fuck yourself raw in the middle of Kmart. Tumblr user Toter Fish Fleisch responds, Walgreens is safer and healthier, I've found. Buzz Lightyear Huge Cock responds, safe and healthy hardly describe what I'm trying to achieve.
Oh my god.
Which, I mean, that was what a lot of Tumblr humor was kind of like. It was just these odd, absurdist statements presented without any sort of vague context. There was all, and then the other one I have here is, my sense of humor is so dark, I laugh at racist and misogynist jokes. I'm a fucking psychopath. Me laughs at this for 15 minutes, and it is a picture of a completely black background. There's a hand in the foreground holding a tiny banana, and there is red text in the bottom right corner that just says, tiny ba ba ba. And
there's so much happening in this one post.
And that's kind of it. That's really what Tumblr was like. And you know, there's really nowhere else on the internet where you get content as like mundanely absurd as that. Like it's a special brand of absurdist humor. And there are reasons why this became the primary mode of humor on Tumblr. A lot of them owing to kind of this like Marxist or pseudo-Marxist perspective that eventually began to permeate through the website. It eventually ended up as on average, a very left-leaning kind of platform, especially when compared to any other platform on the internet, really. Like where else were you gonna go to like get a treatise on like, you know, Marx's Das Kapital? And also you see posts about how horses are a god's mistake in the same like two posts of each other. The absolute juxtaposition of serious content to absurd content was pretty choice. Like you never ran out of something to look at. And I mean, it's kind of a shame that it's like it's like not really that kind of place anymore. Although it kind of is. I have complicated feelings about it. But it's also like, you know, the kind of place where, and this is more akin to Reddit, where people say, or people talk about their lives and with varying degrees of truthfulness. There's the infamous example of the Down with Cis bus, where a Tumblr user infamously talked about their experience where a bunch of trans people came out of a bus and just beat the shit out of them with shirts that said "Down with Cis." That was not a real event. That didn't happen. Of course, it fucking didn't happen.
Of course it didn't.
Why would that happen?
Yeah.
It's now more likely to happen now that you've said that and made that up, right? Like you've created the prophecy that you were trying to avoid. But yeah, like I've cherry picked a post here, which is I fucked up by Tumblr user Silverhawk. They respond, "Shit, lad, sorry, this looks like a vent post, but I was in my living room with my mom, and we were watching that show, Finding Bigfoot, and I was scrolling on Tumblr, and without thinking, not registering this is my mom next to me, I said, Bigfoot is a DILF. And my mom stared at me, and she was like, what? What's a DILF, Blaine? And then she went on her phone and searched it because she's the type of person that has to know what's up. And what I'm saying, she has to understand all lingo in her fucking face when she looked at me. She looked so ashamed. She birthed me and raised me, and I told her to her face that Bigfoot was a DILF. How the fuck do I go on? I'm hiding in my room and we just ordered pizza. How do I go on? I'm starving, but I can't look at her. She looks so ashamed. Yeah. And okay, that's not the best part about this post. This post is obviously a little absurd, but the next part is really what makes it like very Tumblr, which is someone responds with "today" and things that didn't really happen, which right, I mean, a valid criticism. But then someone responds, "You are a Raylo fan blog, but you want to educate me on things that could never happen." Okay. And yeah, that person was utterly destroyed. Like, I mean, if you don't know, Raylo is the ship name for Kylo Ren and Rey from the new Star Wars movies. But boy, that takedown was like unnecessarily brutal. Yep.
Knife to the heart, man. That was rude.
Yep. But it was, I mean, like this is the kind of place where people were very awkward and strange and had no real socialization oftentimes with the greater world outside, which is not to say that the social interactions one has on the internet are invalid, but just that there are very specific flavor, especially on Tumblr, because it was, and I will get into this, a very unmoderated Wild West. Yeah. But it was also the kind of place where people had a lot of really good ideas that, I mean, may or may not have gone places. But like this one is, and this is pretty part of the course, honestly, about a lot of people who wanted something more out of their media experiences. You know, somebody wrote, "I had a dream about a version of Snow White where she's actually like 12 and the dwarves basically adopted her, and it was basically Snow White and her 7 short dads." When she got poisoned by the queen, the dwarves all gave her one last kiss on the forehead to say goodbye before her funeral, and that was the true love's kiss she needed to wake up because her dads all loved her very much. Anyway, Snow White is public domain, so there's literally nothing stopping me from publishing this. That was a post by a Tumblr user named a girl named Ed, and you know this is also the kind of thing that you saw a lot. It was a lot of very creative people, and it's kind of weird because Tumblr also became a place where a lot of artists ended up just kind of by chance. It was like the only real social media platform that had any sort of accommodation for art. Like this is where a lot of people went after people stopped using DeviantArt. I mean, people still use DeviantArt, but it's not a social media platform. It is an art portfolio platform.
Yeah.
So yeah, this. I mean, to be fair, we used it like a social media platform, but that's just weird. Like we were very strange, Renu. We had a very like specific subculture that we grew up in.
Yeah, it's kind of a miracle that you and I even met.
Yeah, it's kind of freaking wild. So, I mean, there were a lot of people who did a lot of really good work. A lot of people who were writing and drawing and doing all kinds of things. You know, linking their Etsy pages where they make like, I don't know, Bilbo Baggins tea cozies. Yeah, I mean, and it was there's a lot of very specific things about old Tumblr. Like here's Throwbacks to 2013 specific Tumblr experiences. Can you make that ask rebloggable? Asks did not used to be rebloggable. You had to take a screen cap of them and then post them and then reblog it.
Yeah.
Any post more than 3 sentences long getting reblogged as a link. I hated that. That was so obnoxious because it's like it's one continuous timeline and you don't want to like take yourself out of that tab.
Exactly. Just that one having to click to open up a new page was just enough to like turn people away from whatever it is that you wrote.
So that sucked. Anyway, seeing someone's reply in a comment chain deleted and wondering what stupid thing they said to get themselves deleted. That was also a thing that happened. Sometimes you would go to a blog and they would just be gone. Having the power to delete / edit other people's comments in general. This was a thing. Like, you kind of... There was... I'm not lying when I say it was kind of a Wild West town, because you could kind of just edit other people's posts and it would still have their name and it would just be reblogged with the new text. And as you can tell, that might have been not the greatest idea and kind of a disaster. Reaction image folders. Well, that one's pretty straightforward. I think a lot of people had these. I still have one of these. Yeah, I might lose followers for this, but this blog supports gay rights. Boy, that was like in the baby days of Tumblr when it had yet to evolve into the weird like puritanical witch hunt it was. Tom Hiddleston and Banditoots thirst. Yeah, this is what I mean by like mediocre white dudes. Like the people were all over these guys. A billion posts about ex-anime nerds getting back into anime because of Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan was really big on Tumblr.
Yeah, oddly very big.
I never like strangely big.
Yeah.
Like Titan-sized almost.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was yeah, I remember a lot of discourse about Attack on Titan, especially because the creator of Attack on Titan is like a known Japanese nationalist, which is kind of wild considering his like entire work was about not trusting the like propaganda of the military. I don't know. It's a somewhat ironic historical footnote. Reblog this image if you're in the X fandom. Yeah, there was a lot of like fandom and self-labeling about fandoms, and this is where fandom kind of evolved into what could arguably be described as like the monstrous form it takes now.
Yeah, there were like maps of fandoms in Tumblr, like every year that someone would make a map.
It was like a goddamn Game of Thrones like power struggle. It was very strange, and I feel like this was the last era where people really identified themselves with like larger fandoms before they realized, wait, this is not a good way to like consume media. Really, it was awesome at the time because you could find people who liked the thing that you liked, but then you realized, well, actually having this many people in like a mob is just never a good idea. But this Tumblr is one of the big reasons why Homestuck was so big, and also one of the reasons why Homestuck was so reviled at every anime convention for a solid like 5 years. Fans loved that shit, and they emulated fandom, and they evolved fandom into what it is now. And I would argue that like Undertale was probably like the like really the last big thing that happened in terms of fandom. I mean, the Undertale fandom got kind of strange. Like there are people drawing skeleton dicks and ecto cum. And it was just kind of a wild time. And, that's when you realize, like, well, okay, children are probably playing this game and looking on their favorite website, tumblr.com, to find fan art. And they're just like, oh, that's a skeleton dick. Oh, God, this should have been tagged better. Oh, boy. Adults are the worst.
Yeah. A lot of scrolling. There was a lot of, like, you can't go through your Tumblr timeline in public where people can see your screen. Because people wouldn't always tag appropriately.
And there were a lot of things that nowadays we kind of think about as cringy, but at the time you're like 15, you're like, wow, this is so cool. You get to be part of like a weird underground subculture that not a lot of other people really know about.
Right.
And so they had this like, oh, I like your shoelaces thing. Thanks, I stole them from the president, right? To signal that they were into the same things. And really, it's just Yeah, I like at that point, maybe you should just like say it with your mouth like a real human being. But I get it. I mean, I understand the kind of fun secretiveness there is to being part of a what is a subculture, and it is a subculture. You never realize when you're in it how much of a weird like niche subculture it is until you're outside of it. And for me, that was when I got to college, like when I transferred into a 4-year university. And was roomed with people who just had vastly different life experience than I did. And I was like, oh, I'm not like a normal person. I thought I was a normal person, but no, I'm really weird.
Now I have to speak a different language.
I mean, it's not to say that I
differently.
Right. It's not to say that I didn't. Right. And then flower crowns on Hannibal characters.
Oh,
Hannibal was so big.
Hannibal was so humongous on Tumblr. Like, oh my god, the fandom was wild.
People loved that funky little murder man who ate the people that were bad. And his maybe boyfriend, I guess. I don't know. Mads Mikkelsen is like the greatest thing to come out of that, though. Let's be honest. He's pretty good. He has like high cryptid energy. He's very strange.
High cryptid energy.
Yeah. Listen, he seems to not know where he is ever, and at the same time, like, comes out and is like, yes, I am a weird Danish man, and I have stolen this show. It's mine now. And you're like, oh, Mads.
Oh, Mads.
Yeah. But yeah, I think in remembering Tumblr and why it was so big and important, like it really was just in the right place at the right time. It was just where people went after LiveJournal, with all their fandom stuff. And that inevitably led to, and like, I'm talking about this and I'm like reading off of a sheet of paper that I wrote like yesterday at like 4 a.m. And if I had more time in my life, I would probably make a video about this, but I don't. So this is kind of the best we're going to get. And like, Renu, I don't know what your experience personally was like with Tumblr, but I was in the middle of all of this.
You were in the thick of it. I was very much on the outer margins of it. Like, oh, my friends are using Tumblr. I'll go on Tumblr and see what's up with that. And I liked it, so I made a personal Tumblr and I made an art Tumblr, and then I haven't touched my personal one in like many, many years. And then my art one I still post to every now and then when I remember it exists. But
right.
Yeah, it was basically just another thing to keep up with my friends, just kind of like how I use Facebook. So
yeah. And I mean, that's why people adopted it, and that's why I use Twitter now. But it's weird because it like there's a lot about Tumblr that I think people have kind of mistaken ideas about, right? Because people who were not in the space don't quite understand what it was like to be in the space. And the basis of Tumblr, right? Because let's be honest, around 2013 and 14, like there were a couple of websites basically that mattered. It was like people used Twitter for like real life stuff, I guess. Like, this is how I talk to people that I've like met once. It's like Facebook, but like a little bit better, because Facebook is just the worst, and has kind of always been the worst. And Reddit was interesting because that was back in the days when Reddit actually generated unique and original content instead of just reposting everything like a million times. But it's the actual discourse that happened in a lot of Reddit communities, which, to be fair, is like, we have to keep in mind that Reddit is like purposefully subdivided into specific communities, and that there's not like a larger Reddit community. But a lot of the discourse in Reddit, and the kind of thread that I saw running through Reddit at the time, and the reason I didn't really use it was because the mode of thinking on Reddit was very kind of rationalist, right? It was very debate focused. It was very I mean, for lack of a better word, it was very like like the Reddit was basically where like the like skeptic community lived, which is like the group of people who made like angry YouTube videos about really bad Christian people. You know, and it was a place where it was thought to be like kind of ruled by logic and reason and rational debate. And of course, like all of this is just kind of like masculine bullshit that we can all see through now. We're just like, well, actually, no, none of this was really objective to begin with. You're just kind of yelling at each other and attempting to one up each other. But Tumblr was much the same way, just in a different way, because Tumblr's like ideological basis was much closer to like literary critique because of all the people who like migrated here from LiveJournal, you know, to make fan fiction. And that was a large part of the initial user base for Tumblr. To make fan fiction and to participate in fandom is to look at things through a critical lens and to analyze them. And I mean, you know, to purposely read things wrong sometimes. You know, to say like this is the idea of like queer theory, right? It's like I'm not reading this the way it was intended to be to be read, but it's still a valid interpretation because that's how interpretation works, right? Yeah. And it was also very sociological, right? This is where the kind of like dichotomy of like the social justice warrior was born, and later it was kind of like picked up. Like initially, social justice warrior was a thing that people like. It was a label that people wore with pride because, you know, it meant like I believe in social justice and the kind of tenets of like...
stick up for the little man.
Right, sticking up for like marginalized group, because a lot of people on Tumblr were marginalized groups, and they didn't have the language to express that frustration until they got on Tumblr and were kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated into the space. And it was interesting because it became clear at a certain point that people didn't really understand the things they were doing. And they were also quite young, and so no one ever told them like, okay, like at the end of the day, like we should probably still be a little bit reasonable to each other and not send each other death threats over differing ideas. Because no matter what you think about it, if you're sending people hundreds and hundreds of death threats for fucking up slightly, and it was in sometimes very slight bad things that they did, then you know you're doing something that's not good, and you're kind of losing sight of what social justice was about, really. About like if your social justice isn't for people, then who's it for? You know, it's performative, right? And that was a large problem with the way that Tumblr eventually developed, where that was essentially this performative social justice, it eventually became like a performative, like puritanical culture.
It was like, it's a self-perpetuating thing where it was like, if you even so much as criticize these, you know, this group, then you were just part of the problem, and then they would go even harder, and they would just include you in their criticism, right? You'd be in the warpath, and so it just, whatever you did just made them stronger, kind of thing.
It was very witch hunt-y, and I think people will point to that and just be like, look at social justice. They're all witch hunters. They're not doing it for real people. They're doing it for themselves. And I mean, to a large extent that was true, but I mean, there were at the end of the day, a lot of people were exposed to some ideas that they wouldn't think about necessarily. And I think that if people were more willing to not just kind of boil things down to black or white issues, and if people were more willing to put in work, and it is work to do social justice, right? Like I was very, you know, passionate about this when I was younger, but now that I've grown up, it's so hard for me to be angry anymore. Like I'm like furious about the things that are happening, the kind of injustices that happen in the world, but my role in it has become so small, and so like my perspective of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And as I've grown older, I've gained a lot of perspective, and it's like I just don't have the time or the emotional energy to expend, rehabilitating someone. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just to stop talking to somebody if they're gonna, not. I mean, this isn't to say don't take shit, right? But I'm not gonna go out of my way to just be like, you said a bad thing, how dare you? It's like, well, I'll gently correct you. I'll just be like, well, actually, whatever. And if you're not gonna listen, right? I mean, I'm probably just gonna be less willing to talk to you, to be honest. It's not that hard.
I mean, everyone needs someone to check themselves, to check each other, right? Like someone you trust, and when people go on these witch hunts, it's because they're going unchecked, right? Those people are the ones that are going unchecked.
The call-out post culture became so toxic on Tumblr that it eventually cannibalized itself. Because boy, it was kind of wild to just see OP is like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh yeah, well this OP is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, whoa, okay, this is getting really heavy, and I don't want a part of this. Like, you guys are just tearing each other apart for no other reason than for brownie points. And it gets to a point where it is a toxic space, and obviously you can't talk about Tumblr as a big thing, right? Like a uniform hive mind collective mass, but the larger culture of a very large part of it was like this, and it was like adults sending death threats to children, and children sending death threats to adults, and it's like, it's not the kind of space that you want anybody to grow up in, really.
Yeah
Tumblr had a very flattening effect on everything, right? It didn't really matter what you were, like young, old, what race you were, except for unless you were fishing for brownie points, or sometimes in the case of legitimately talking about legitimacy and claim to talking about an issue, right? It is, I'm more likely to listen to somebody who has the experiences that we're talking about than somebody who has never experienced them, right? It's like, I would never listen to a white person try to talk about the Asian American experience. I just wouldn't, right? Because that's mine.
That's mine.
No, which isn't to say you can never talk about it ever. It's just how can you possibly have the perspective that I have, right? Why are you talking over me about this?
They would only be able to talk about their own personal perspective on something as an outsider. They would be able to say, as an outsider, this is my perspective on such and such, right?
Right.
It's very you can't categorize it or lump it all together as one thing.
But yeah, there was a very volcanic period of Tumblr where this was kind of being fought over and hashed out, and there was a lot of some of the subcultures that arose on Tumblr were very strange. There was a shoplifting community that arose on Tumblr that decided that shoplifting was a way to subvert capitalism and consumerism. Get
it back at the man.
Right, getting back at the man, when in reality it's actually just, hurting retail workers. And even if it isn't, we have to stop thinking about bullshit like that, right? We can't just say this is hurting the man. It's not. The man doesn't give a shit. But you have the potential to be hurting the actual working people who work there. And at that point, again, it's what is there social justice for? Who is it for?
Right.
Not only to mention just it's kind of a flawed ideological basis to begin with, right? It's you can't talk about anti-capitalism while at the same time explicitly participating in the commodity exchange of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
There is, you can't, you lose. Here's the thing. I understand people who have to shoplift for necessities like food. But the problem with the shoplifting community, those are words that really came out of my mouth just now, right? A community of people that shoplift, or really privileged white people. They were privileged white people that stole makeup and cosmetics and things that are not necessarily like, you're not stealing medicine or bread to feed your family. Like you're stealing makeup because you don't want to pay for it. And it's like, yeah, I get it. You know, it really sucks that we're living in a society where everything is assigned value and the value exchange is like king, and your worth as a human being is reduced to a quantitative value. But that's not the way to do it, right? So yeah, I think Tumblr is the only place that'll tell you that Tumblr isn't over. Like, I think there are a lot of people still on that platform who have basically weathered every storm that has passed through Tumblr and potentially been ending it. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, old and jaded people that have been on that website forever that are still using it.
Like the people who like stick around even though the town is evacuating for a hurricane or something. Yeah.
Like, I don't think they're wrong. Like, I don't think Tumblr is like completely dead, but I also think that it's been probably a little while since everyone has just kind of generally moved on. Supposedly the queer-er and left-er groups migrated to Mastodon, like Mastodon communities. Mastodon is like it's like an open source Tumblr, not a Tumblr, a Twitter sort of thing, where you set up instances which are like subreddits essentially, where you can exist and tweet at each other.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think everyone else probably just drifted towards like Instagram or Twitter. Obviously, no one lives on Facebook.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it kind of feels like part of it was just a lot of people on the internet, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, growing up. Like, I mean, to I don't have a better word for this, but they're like Twitter and Instagram are like quote unquote realer social medias. The thing is that Tumblr is like such a relic of like old internet, like I guess 2.0 or like 3.0. I don't know how we're measuring this, but the kind of internet where wild anonymity was just the norm, and you would never know anybody except for like their Tumblr icon. You just be like, oh, I mean that person has just always been like a picture of like, I don't know, a lemon with like a hat on it. Like, that's just how it is.
Yeah, that is how it is, because like even recently, like when I've logged into my Tumblr to post an art thing, I'll have a glance at my feed or whatever, my timeline, and it'll be all these people, and I'm like, who are you though?
Right.
Because they all changed their usernames.
Yeah.
They changed their usernames, they changed their icons, and now it's just like I don't know who you are anymore. I'd have to like scroll all the way through your blog to like figure it out.
Yeah. It's I mean, I have that too, especially because I stopped using Tumblr sometime last year. Probably in the first couple of months. I just kind of moved on to other things, I guess. I don't know. It just wasn't something that occupied a lot of my time anymore. And that was really before this whole kerfuffle went down about having not safe for work content on the platform.
Yeah.
It just kind of became something that I didn't, I guess, need anymore. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but it is almost like, you know, growing up and you're like, well, I don't need my imaginary friend anymore. It's just not to say that, you know, those relationships aren't legitimate. There are a lot of people that I met on Tumblr that like I'm still like mutuals with and still talk to. And like Tumblr is like where the thing is, I moved to Tumblr from DeviantArt, and so my sort of modus operandi was just to follow as many artists as possible, because all my artists, all the artists that I followed were going to Tumblr. So I just followed all of those people, and I just kept finding new people to follow. And eventually I was following like 8,000 art blogs or something. It was something ridiculous.
Oh my God.
But like Tumblr is like the first place where I saw a lot of these people that, I mean, I still see today, right? Because I'm still following their Twitters. But you know, that it was like the place where I saw like, you know, Lee Hama's art for the first time. She had a comic about like I think she was the one that did the comic about the when adults go on like adventures. Like she had this belief when she was younger that adults always went on like a fantastical adventure, but they weren't allowed to tell anybody about it, which I thought was really cute. And I think that's why I started following her. Now that I think about it, I couldn't remember back when we did the Gourmet Hound episode, but that really might be it. Like I probably saw that comic circulating around, and like, you know, people that we know have had their posts kind of like all over Tumblr, like Cole's cat post, like his cat drawing.
Mother of God.
Yeah, that post has been all over the place.
Post. And the fact that people have come after him being like, you can't repost this without crediting the artist. And he's like, I am the artist.
I did this, right?
Well, it's also partially because he never signs his goddamn work. So
yeah, that's true. That's his fault. But yeah, I mean, there's a post about that our friend Cole, a lover of Scythe, has done, which is like actually pretty like famous, I guess, on Tumblr about his cat.
It was so sad, and yeah, it got super freaking internet famous for a while, and I think it is still circulating. Even my Ava post, the Ava drawing that I did, I've had people come up to me at conventions being like, "Oh, I saw this on Tumblr," and I'm like,
"Wow,
whoa.
Yeah, who are you?"
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah, I think it felt like for a long time that Tumblr was a place that would foster some kind of change, right? Like there was a kind of spark in Tumblr of what could be. I mean, and part of this is because it was such a like at least nominally anti-capitalist space, right? And this and this is like the primary mode of communication on Tumblr, and like the primary mode of humor was absurdist. And I contend that the reason that this is the case is largely the reason that it was the case in like, you know, the early 20th century with like Dada, right? It's like neo-Dada because people who are tired and exhausted of being in a system that only cares about value, right? Making text posts is like it simultaneously like fulfills that value because people are like validating you, and at the same time it's like completely worthless. Like it's just nothing. And people have tried to monetize the communities. There was the famous case of a lot of really big Tumblr users, Tumblr user Pizza being one of them, who essentially leveraged their huge audiences, like thousands of people followed, like hundreds of thousands of people followed them, maybe even millions. Probably not millions. I don't think that many people use Tumblr. But like they had such wide-reaching audiences, and their posts also had an even larger reach because people would reblog them and they would reach people outside of that, right? It was truly a way for content to go viral, and those people turned around and started selling diet supplements, right? And like participating in like these like pyramid schemes, and eventually those disappeared, and there was like well, there was that one blog run by that like 14-year-old. It was like memes of production or something. No, I don't remember. But people were like oddly hostile to this like really funny 14-year-old. There's like, man, I'm so glad that she's not making content anymore. It's like, whoa, like that. Wow. Like there was a reason that those posts were popular. It's because they were absurd and funny, and you're just like. Yeah, I don't know. It was a very strange place, honestly, and it was also like just counter to any kind of marketing at all. Like it was the kind of place where it was impossible to market anything on purpose. Like it was such a microcosm of like the current sort of cultural space that exists for people who grew up on the internet or grew up with the internet, where you know. Advertisements, they work for sure, but like they're less likely to work. I mean, they still work. Don't kid yourself. They still work on people who are aware that they're advertisements. But it is, you know, we're kind of moving into a mode of commerce as young people, I guess, as those youngins. that where what we value above all else is like real testimony and recommendations by people we trust, right? And for some people that is like, you know, celebrities like marketing a product like Dr. Disrespect Marketing G Fuel for Gamers. And you know, sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm like a person, like a real human art person that you've been following for like 4 years. I use this tablet and it's pretty good and cheap. Maybe you consider using it if you are thinking of getting into art. And you're like, yeah, right? Like that kind of thing is way better at selling and moving product than anything else is nowadays. Especially for people who are kind of savvy to the space. And it's like, it's a very interesting place that we're in now, where Tumblr doesn't really exist in that capacity anymore. I mean, it still exists, but it kind of feels like what's really left is just like an endless repetition loop of the last thing it was before it died. It's just kind of like, it's like echoing an unforgettable past, not realizing that it's dead, right? It's very like Ava, right? Where you're it's like
It's very Ava.
It is like where the boundaries between everything have kind of like, the world is over. It's kind of ended, and then like it's kind of apocalyptic to look at it that way. But Tumblr just doesn't feel like the same place it was, and more than that, it doesn't feel like a place with a future, and it doesn't feel like a place where anything more will. It's like barren earth now. You know, it's kind of like scorched earth.
We're gonna have a Tumblr rebuild, and we're gonna have another film franchise and throw a lot of money at it.
In like 10 years, we'll have Tumblr rebuild when we're all living in like either the like terrible dystopian remnants of a nuclear winter, or maybe a place that is slightly better than today. I don't know. It is difficult to really judge that, and I mean, like I'm kind of sad about it, I guess, like in kind of a weird nostalgic way, because Tumblr was a large part of shaping me as I grew up, and obviously I eventually developed some critical thinking for myself, and was like, had the luxury of being able to examine my own assumptions and think for myself, really, I guess, and, you know, analyze where these feelings were coming from, where these feelings of frustration and passion were coming from, and what I wanted to do with them. And I think I'm lucky in that respect, because I think a lot of people never really grew out of that. And I'm not saying that they necessarily have to, but I think there's, I mean, I think it's valuable to have that larger perspective, because like Tumblr was a place that just kind of let you indulge in whatever. It was like it was kind of the last remnant of the weird Wild West internet before all of these like regulations and all of these spotlights shown, and people becoming more and more in line with, you know, how they present themselves in real life, right? Or in like kind of the physical space. And to draw like a weird comparison, it's kind of like the San Francisco of the internet, where San Francisco is an inhospitable, terrible place where nothing is ever okay. No one can possibly live there because it is hostile to all forms of life, whether it be financially or socially. But that's also kind of the appeal of it, right? That's kind of why I like it. I like the fact that it is a place that is so hostile to people that no one feels welcome there. But yeah, and it's also like it's kind of a weird Wild West town where like everything is pretty much the same as it was like 60 years ago, kind of. Now there's just more tech startups, and you know, it's kind of sad to see that kind of place go, but you realize that it kind of has to, right? There's no getting around it.
San Francisco has to go.
No, I mean, this is real. Something in San Francisco has to break before it gets better, because the zoning laws mean we can't build up, we can't build down because we're not like super future people, and we also have earthquakes, and that's just a giant hazard in and of itself. You know, we can't expand outwards because we're on a fucking peninsula. There's nowhere to go for San Francisco. So something has to break before it gets better.
Oh God!
But like to give you a sense of perspective, no drama anywhere on the internet will ever stack up to the kind of drama that existed on Tumblr.com. Because Tumblr.com was the kind of place where somebody was legitimately like a community of people, probably even like multiple people were kin, which is like a term referred to as like identifying with something or someone as your kind of identity marker, right? Like to say like I'm kin with like this fictional character is to say like, you know, I identify heavily with this character to the point where the distinction is like pretty much non-existent, right? And
yeah.
I've never personally understood it, but like, you know, you do whatever makes you happy, right? Like I'm sure that old people don't understand what like young people are doing with their identities, and maybe I'm becoming an old person, but like honestly, if that shit makes you happy, then whatever. I don't have to understand it. I just have to say like, cool. Like, I mean, it's neat that you have a new way of expressing yourself that I never would have thought of. But you know, people on Tumblr were like, and this is not like a joke even, right? Like a lot of kin accounts on Tumblr were jokes. Like it's like, oh, I'm a plant kin. But sometimes it was hard to tell because some people were like actually like that, and then some people were just what they thought what that was like, and it was kind of a comedy of errors. It became increasingly hard to tell sometimes. Except some people were like very obvious. Like, do you know this? Where like if people make a fake account for like quote unquote leftist ideals, but like they're really shitty, it's always really clear that they don't actually get it. But anyway, my point is people were legitimately kinning with Andrew Jackson, the 7th actual president of the United States of America. Like the guy on the $20 bill who was like the worst dude ever and a giant racist and like did everything he could to like take land away from and kill Native American. Like that guy? People are kidding that guy? Who does that?
He's their spirit animal.
Why? I mean, I don't like. I want to be understanding of people and like accommodating of their identities, but that's like you're making it so hard for me.
It's part of the absurdist humor.
I don't think so. I think people actually were just like, you know, I just identify really heavily with Andrew Jackson, 7th president of the United States of America, and there was nothing funnier than seeing like a discourse post, like a serious discourse post about whatever topic, and then someone goes, "OP is kin with Andrew Jackson," and you're just like, what? That just throws everything out the window. Nothing matters anymore. And there's always, of course, the OP as a necrophile, and that's like a real thing that people were like doing, and it's just like,
oh no,
oh boy, yep. Like there was drama about a person who was stealing bones from unmarked graves to do witchcraft. This was real. This was a real documented thing that happened. Which is like, okay.
That's not
sure. Okay. There was a person who sent their amputated toe to another person to make jewelry out of it, and I guess it was technically legal because it was their toe.
It's their toe, yeah.
They can do what they want with it, I guess. I mean, there were definitely some health concerns about shipping a toe across the United States, but like this is the kind of shit that happened on Tumblr.com. It was so wild, and you can't even imagine how wild it got. There was like Woody's Roundup, which was a thing that you probably were not around for, but it was a thing where people who were shitty on Tumblr.com, like people with truly shitty accounts, like often deactivated due to harassment, which is, I mean, a problem. But then somebody would take the URL, and this is the thing you could do. You could just, if somebody deactivated their account, you could just take it, essentially. Or you could hack into the account, and this is the thing that happened as well. But people would just set the picture to Woody from Toy Story doing his like 1,000-yard glass eyeball faking being a toy stare, and it would just be the header would just become howdy partner, and then that was it. There would just like you could see. And it legitimately felt like the remnants of a battlefield when you watched a discourse post pass by your dashboard, and you saw like half of them are Woodies, and you're like, oh, those people don't exist anymore. They're part of the Woody collective now. And like the people who were Woodied in a sense were they were like Nazis and pedophiles and TERFs, and it's like, yeah, okay. It became like kind of a weird vigilante force where they would start like, yeah. And if people were being shitty, they would start commenting on the post, howdy partner, howdy partner, howdy partner. And it was like really weird and distressing. And then if they deactivated their account, like somebody would just Woody it. And it was like, that was the kind of shit that happened on Tumblr. And I cannot make this up. People are so weird, and we got the like highest spectrum of weirdness on this website. And to see that it's kind of just gone is kind of a shame. Like, I don't think people will ever stop being weird, but this was like peak weird.
Yeah.
Constable Frozen was a thing that happened. Like somebody who just made incredibly, incredibly competent and highly elaborate edits of Disney movies. Like, no joke, at least half of them were like the Frozen characters donning Iron Man suits, and it looked like it fit in the universe because this person was some kind of photoshopping genius. It was very strange. I don't know. There's just something. We lost something when Tumblr stopped, existing, in the capacity that it was before, because it was like a place where it felt like a real counterculture existed and a real community existed. Well, maybe not a real community, but a community or some semblance thereof existed. And it's like it is something that we have to say goodbye to, because for all of its faults, it was a place where people were expressing themselves with such honesty and earnestness and honestly strangeness that I just like, we really just saw that's it, man. But it was also a place for like marginalized people to carve out an existence and be recognized, and for people to sell sex work as a legitimate business.
It's we'll always have like new communities and new platforms that people migrate to, or that new young upsetties, young like SJWs or whoever, that they'll find a new place. But Tumblr, I don't think there will be quite anything that is just like Tumblr. It was just such a unique existence that you can never really replicate it.
Right. It was a very strange powder keg, and it went off, and it lasted much longer than anybody really expected it to. I mean, yeah. But now we're just kind of staring at the embers, and we kind of miss that fire. And it's not to say that it's not. I don't miss it. Well,
I don't go back to my old blog and look at it nostalgically. I'm like,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, like a lot of this is, of course, like the benefit of hindsight and nostalgia, right? It's like, I mean, boy, it was an emotionally charged experience existing on Tumblr in like the early 2010s and the late 2010s. Yeah.
I think a lot of people were able to vent a lot of things on Tumblr.
Yeah, I mean, it was an expression on the internet of a place that wasn't just like mainstream or purely rational or whatever. It was a place where people gathered together to talk about the things they liked to, I mean, somewhat detrimental degrees at some point. Like if you're sending death threats to each other about like Undertale discourse, you need to take a step back, honey.
Yeah.
Like you can't. No, like we just have to stop that, right? Yeah. We have to collectively agree that that's just not okay to do anymore. And I think yeah, I don't know where that community has gone. I'm sure it's out there. And this is the thing, right? Like, Tumblr used to be a source of memes and content, and in fact, it used to be a really probably in the last couple of years of its life, it like supernovaed and became a place where people just took screen caps from Tumblr and they just posted Tumblr posts to Reddit, and they were just like, "Look, this is a funny meme." It's like, you didn't make that. Yeah, they posted
to Reddit. I'd see it on Facebook, and I'd be like, "What?"
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I'm like weirdly sad about it being gone.
It's kind of like saying goodbye to a phase of your life, you know?
Right. It is saying goodbye to your youth, right? It's like saying you'll never remember the last time that you like went inside after playing outside with your friends, but there was a time when that happened. And you know, it's kind of like that, right? Like the sun is setting, and everyone's going inside, and we might just not come out again. I mean, which is kind of a grim way to put that. But like, you know, I've always been kind of a hermit, but it's even more real now. I just kind of don't exist in a social media sense anymore, especially because social media has gotten so conflated with meat space. You know, I kind of just like that Tumblr was a place where like people were nothing except for what they posted on their blog and what they talked about. And so you would just be like, oh, well, fuck, there's Dolphin Fucker 69420 right there. He's still on about dolphins. Boy, it sure is strange, but you go Dolphin Fucker 69420. You live your goddamn heart out. You know, you do it.
Dreams.
follow your weird dolphin fetish dreams.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not to say that, you know, Tumblr was always like an amazing place. Like, Tumblr had the same problems that all social media platforms had, which is to say it never did anything about white supremacy or Nazis, but it did a lot about things that were sensitive to marginalized groups, which was, of course, always shitty, but that's just how businesses operate. They're just bad. You just can't trust a corporation. It just doesn't work, which is why people have moved to Mastodon, because it's more of a collectivist social media platform ? I don't know. I don't think I can ever really use Mastodon. It just doesn't click with me. Not in the same way that anything else. I think part of the reason is that Mastodon is like horrifyingly ugly to look at.
Oh.
It looks like TweetDeck, and TweetDeck is not pretty, but it's functional. Like,
I think that's one of the reasons why I never was a huge Reddit user, was because it was so like, I mean, it's nice that it's bare bones, but also like I'm one of those like it has to be aesthetically pleasing to me kind of people.
I don't like the way that Reddit is formatted, or the kind of things that it does. I visit a handful of Reddits, which is to say I go on the Granblue Fantasy Reddit and then Overwatch when there's an event sometimes, and that's about it. You know, I interface with that because it is a community. It is an easily accessible community where people talk in English about a thing that otherwise I would have trouble finding. And I don't necessarily want to join a Discord group about like Granblue. I just kind of want to exist looking at things that people are talking about and being keyed into that. Yeah. Like that's the thing. I don't really know where memes come from anymore. At least not in the capacity that like they existed on Tumblr, where like you would just, somebody would discover a meme and then you would just endlessly rehash it for a month, get sick of it, and move on. I mean, the cycles became shorter and shorter. Eventually, it was just like, okay, we did this meme for 2 weeks. We're kind of done. And of course, there is something to be said about the way that memes worked as like kind of a way we consume culture. And I use the word consume very purposefully. You know, it is a result of the way that we live, that we live in this capitalist society. And like, you're gonna have to deal with me like talking about capitalism a lot, because one, it's gonna be the fucking death of us. Two, I'm reading actual Marx for class, so it's just kind of in my headspace right now. But it is important that we think about culture as being consumed, because we kind of just chew it and spit it out and we're kind of done with it. Because that's how capitalism works. It's a system of consumption, of infinite expansion and infinite consumption, and eventually those resources will run dry.
It's not so infinite.
as is seen, yeah, right. It is impossible for infinite expansion to be sustainable. And I don't know what that means for Tumblr.com, because it's kind of just over on Tumblr.com. I'm just going to declare that now. Like, people still use it, and people still make funny posts on it, but it is nowhere near the quote-unquote golden age that it once was.
Yeah, it got consumed.
I mean, yeah, basically.
And spat out.
People just left for greener pastures. And I think that's valid. I will say the one thing that Tumblr did that for some reason, Tumblr was such a broken website just all the time, but for some reason, the one thing it never changed that everyone else decided, you know what, we'll change this, was it decided to keep chronological timelines. Twitter, please keep chronological timelines. I don't care about what's quote unquote hot. I just want to see the goddamn post in order. Like,
I agree.
Jack Dorsey, I'm gonna find you.
Yeah, I don't like scrolling through my timeline, right? I'll see some interesting stuff. I'm like, okay. And then, like, it'll be all out of order in terms of time. So I'm like, oh, this was from, like, 3 days ago. Oh, I'm...
Yeah.
Where am I right now? And then the next thing that I see was from, like, a couple hours ago. And I'm like... So I'm late to one thing and I'm on time for another thing, and it feels like I would like to see it chronologically, because like I also follow like a lot of friends, so I like to keep up with friends too, and it's like it doesn't make any sense to have it arranged like that, you know?
Yeah. But I think we easily could have talked about anything else today, and my brain just kind of went to Tumblr because it was having thoughts about it, and like Tumblr is the kind of place we'll probably never see again, and it was a very important thing to me growing up, because that was where a lot of growing up happened on Tumblr for everybody involved. Not everybody involved. Some people never grew up, but for a lot of people. For a lot of people, there was a lot of growing up that happened on Tumblr.
It was a part of your formative years,
right? And I'm glad that my formative years, for better or for worse, and despite all of the bad shit that also happened, I'm glad that what it was a place where, more than anything else, like the social sciences and literary critique and these kinds of, you know, creative endeavors were the things that were valued. I'm glad that was the place where I ended up, and not in like red pill Reddit where they're just like, you got to keep your semen inside your body because it gives you power, and women are actually just trying to steal it, which is like, okay, all right, buddy, all right. I'm just gonna. I mean,
I'm sure there are places like that on Tumblr too. But it was
absolutely. But like, you know, the majority, at least of relevant Tumblr, is quite the opposite. You know, I'm gonna stick with Buzz Lightyear, huge cock, saying some days you just gotta fist fuck yourself raw in the middle of Kmart. You know, they're right. No, you
don't. No,
they're completely right. Sometimes you just gotta fist fuck yourself raw in the middle of Kmart.
No, Soup.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. Buzz Lightyear Hugecock said it, so it must be true.
Rule.
Yeah. Anyway, that's I guess that's it. Abayo, Tumblr. It's been good.
Abayo.
All right, where can we find you on the internet? What are you doing this week?
Let's see. I just last weekend finished Yakuza Kiwami 2, finally.
Nice.
So this week I will be streaming some art, and then next week Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, and then I'll start streaming that. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I know. So get ready, internet. You're about to be even more bombarded than you already are. You'll probably start being bombarded tomorrow, because that's when it releases in Japan. So just... I hope you can weather the storm for the next couple of years of Kingdom Hearts. But yeah, you can find me on Twitch at SwanDrawn, on Instagram at swan.drawn. Come hang out if you if you want to see some stuff. I got some people that came from our podcast listening to it on YouTube and came to my Twitch. I was like, that's so sweet.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I don't interface with the YouTube at all. That's your job. I don't know anything about what happens on YouTube. It's kind of just wild over there. I like check. I go to check like the art that you do every week, and then that's kind of it.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you up to this week?
You can find me in all places at Literal Soup. I mean, honestly, like I don't really exist between Tuesday and Thursday because those are my class days, and they really are like very long, and they start at 8 a.m. But that means I have to get up earlier to make it by 8 a.m. So, yeah, it's not amazing. But I'll make it through. I'm 3/10 of the way through. So next week is 4/10, and that means this is starting to look viable. Or at the very least, I've just kind of locked myself in, and there's no avoiding it.
It's okay.
Yeah, I am. Other than school, I've signed up for an Overwatch tournament with my friends. We signed up for the GGNA, which is the Get Good NA, which is a tournament put on by a Twitch streamer and Overwatch League assistant coach Jane. Yeah, so I signed up for an Overwatch tournament with some of my other friends, and I don't know. I think it'll be fun. We'll see how far we get. We don't have a coach, but we're just gonna wing it. We're just gonna wing it. We'll see if we can get anywhere. It just means that I have to. I don't know. It's kind of fun and exciting because I get to do things that are normally not socially acceptable, like practice Genji, and.
That's not socially acceptable.
No, it is not. It is not socially acceptable to be a Genji main unless your name is Fleta or Haksal or Who Are You, or I guess Mangachu, or AKM. But that's a joke. Anyway, I just said a bunch of things that you won't get, but it's fine.
You went right over my head.
It's fine. It do just be like that. Other than that, I mean, I probably have other stuff going on, but honestly, I'm like so frazzled by the idea of the D&D that I have to go to.
Yeah.
At least it's on the internet today, so I don't have to leave my house. But you know, the 3 D&D sessions I have every week, and that's in addition to all the other stuff that I have, including all the reading that I have to do. God, I have to do so much reading this quarter.
Yeah, you have to read, and you have to train in Overwatch, and
I have to train in Overwatch. I gotta become the Genji main I was always meant to be, really. But yeah, I think that's
Genji main.
Listen, I normally am a good player. I normally play like tanks, which is like the
really. Well,
the hardest.
When I was watching you were playing Widow.
Oh, that's because I was on my my DPS only account.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't need to practice Widowmaker really anymore because my friend is like, he puts more time into it than I do, and as a result, he's probably just going to be better than I am. So I'm just going to practice or projectile instead of hit scan. So thus I am the Genji main, resident Genji main. Anyway. Yeah, whatever is the case, if anything else happens, I'll probably tell you about it next time we record. And actually one more thing. One more thing. So my friend said that she has a friend who makes sourdough bread, so I'm gonna take some starter from him and make some bread.
Wait, what happened to Steven?
Yeah, my sister killed Steven.
What happened?
It's a whole thing, Renu. We'll talk about it next time. I'll tell you.
My God!
I'll tell you if I have bread next time.
All you have to know.
Well, no, it's just the first murder. I just didn't start the fourth one.
The fourth one?
No, well, okay. So my sister killed Stephen the Third. I just didn't bother to start Stephen the Fourth.
Oh my God.
Anyway. Our opening music was like last time, A Love Letter From You by Desire from the album Plastic Whatever, which we've modified slightly to fit our podcast. yeah, I guess we'll see you next time, whenever that is, and hopefully it is not too late to talk about the winter season. I almost said fall. Well, that's like on the other outside of the year. But yeah. Before I forget, Friday is going to be the day that we release the podcast from now on, at least for the foreseeable future, and
yes,
because it just works better for my schedule. I can't do anything on Wednesday. Like it would be physically impossible for me unless we recorded really early and then edited really early. And like, what are the chances of that happening? It's like zero.
Yeah.
I love the podcast, but I'm also just a lazy bastard.
It's fine. We can move it around for your schedule.
Yeah. So it'll be on Fridays, more or less every other week, but we might have some allowances for certain weeks depending. Like we might, and I strongly say might have an episode next week.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it'll be Fridays on our. It'll be released on our website and our Twitter, and YouTube is still going to be on Mondays. So
right. Be sure to like check out our Twitter page at literal. That's me at literal.
That's
soup.
you.
At absolute.
How dare you?
At absolute cast. Check out our YouTube because Renu makes amazing videos and
No.
Yeah. We're focused. Okay, I think it's finally time to announce that we're working on a Discord server, so we can cobble that together, make that functional, and then pass it off to the public so that they can all join and talk about our podcast if they really want to. Which I'm suspecting is like one or two people, but you know what? It's fine. That's just how it is. But yeah, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening. We do this for you. we do this for you. Chance.
I totally thought you were going to reference the fisting again, but I'm glad you went with
what? That's a good one too. That's a good one too.
No, it's not.
Don't forget to fist fuck yourself raw in the middle of Kmart.